Sandra? I get a little chair. Well, let me say that it's a pleasure to be back. And seldom have I come back to such a rousing welcome. Let me also apologize for postponing this welcome. I really don't like to duck the press, and yet I was out of touch for a couple of weeks and felt as though it was important for me to at least read what you had been writing and be briefed about what had been said before I made any comment. Let me begin by saying very clearly that the city of Atlanta, its citizens, this administration will not in any way sanction or tolerate the use or abuse of illegal drugs. It's not socially acceptable, it's not legally acceptable, it's not morally acceptable. And anything and everything that I have tried to do as mayor of this city has been directed to putting an end to the flow of illegal drugs throughout our community and anywhere in our community. It's my own view that it's not protection of one's friends to try to cover up. In fact, I think the record would show that people may be much better off being exposed and treated, even if that means conviction, than continuing to linger in a situation of drug abuse, which almost certainly, if continued, leads to death. And so I want to say that in spite of all that's been said, in spite of all that's been written, there has never been a slowdown, there has never been a pause in the ongoing drug investigations that have been conducted by the city of Atlanta. Those drug investigations have been going on before the incidents surrounding Julian Bond. They have gone on throughout the press publicity around these incidents, and they will continue until there are indictments and convictions wherever those indictments or convictions are possible. We worked in very close harmony with the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And on the matter of drug abuse by public officials, those matters essentially are not prosecuted or even further investigated by the city. They are passed on to the Drug Enforcement Administration through the District Attorney's Office and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And I have no reason to assume that all of the allegations that have been made by anybody in regard to anybody, including myself, are not continually under investigation by those sources. Now let me say that in addition to a strong and vigorous enforcement of laws in relationship to drugs, and in addition to efforts to convict and punish those who are guilty, a city government and any government also has a responsibility to protect those who are innocent from gossip, from innuendo, from outright lies that essentially can feed into the system and through the media to the public at large. And I have found myself embarrassingly caught in the middle of this situation. And I'd like to say, for whatever it's worth, that I have not ever even seen cocaine have not seen it in use by anyone except in the movies. Any allegations about my involvement with those kinds of drugs is absolutely ridiculous. I think from my early childhood, I saw the destructive potential of heroin, even as a grammar school student, and growing up in New Orleans. And there's never been anything romantic or chic or sophisticated about drugs. It's always been seen by me as a tragedy and a sickness to be opposed and avoided at all cost. Even as a college student, I didn't hang around places where the air smelled funny. That's been my record throughout my career and the civil rights movement, most of which was clearly monitored and documented, at least from the period of 1964 to 1972. And I have no reason to believe that during the time that I was in the Congress and the time that I was subjected to an FBI investigation before Senate confirmation as United Nations ambassador, I have no reason to believe that my life was not monitored. In fact, I have reason to know that my life was totally monitored throughout all that period. And if there had been any history or tradition of any kind of drug abuse, I would not have been confirmed by the United States Senate as the United States ambassador. And so I think in approaching this situation, it's important for me to make very clear the chronology of my involvement and of my concern about Alice and Julian Bond, as I was informed, about the middle of March, the week of the 16th through the 20th, roughly, by several friends of the Bonds, that I should talk with them. And I should talk with them about matters which were personal, which I would talk with them as a friend. I made an effort to get in touch with Julian Bond, attempted to set up an appointment with him. Our schedules did not coincide, and I was never able to talk to Julian and have not talked to Julian for over a month. Well, the last time I talked to Julian was in regard to meetings in relationship to his campaign and the aftermath of the campaign, and mainly the campaign debt. I did, however, express my concern about Alice Bond and about Julian's family, both to my wife and to Shirley Franklin, my chief administrative officer, and basically as a friend, concerned about the problems of people having to live out very difficult times in their lives before the public. I lost an election. I know some of the emotional turmoil that you go through personally and as a family in the necessary readjustment of one's life. And it was out of those kinds of concerns for the welfare of Alice Bond and the Bond children, that I made a call to Alice Bond on March 25th. Prior to that time, I had been informed, after I talked to friends of the Bonds about their situation, I went to Chief Redding and asked him if he knew anything about it. At that time, he said he didn't, but he'd check on it. On the afternoon or evening of March 24th, he stopped by the office. I began talking with him basically about our city police basketball team which had recently gone to the finals in the International Police Officers Basketball League tournament up in Montreal, Canada. And I sort of chastised him because that had gotten little and no attention, and that when our officers do something like that, we ought to find a way to pay some attention to it. He assured me we would, and we then began to talk about the ongoing investigation. Chief Redding mentioned to me that there were lots of allegations that had been made. He had been briefed verbally, but he had not seen the reports. He would keep me informed. That was the only time that I talked to Chief Redding. He did mention that there were some allegations about public officials. He did not mention my name in any way in connection with that, and I'm not sure that he knew that my name was involved. I went on to Tokyo with the trade mission for the Atlanta Chamber and did not hear any more about this until I think about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on April 9th, when a gentleman from the Constitution disturbed my sleep to ask me about the transfers. And I did not know what transfers. I did know about the incidents and the allegations surrounding the Bond's personal situation. But I was only informed basically by Jim Galloway that my name was on a list and that there were allegations that I had been seen using or abusing drugs, or that somebody said that's what I was doing. And I talked to Jim and recalled as best I could the conversation which I had with Alice Bond before leaving, which essentially occurred about 1 o'clock in the afternoon and was not very long, because as soon as she picked up the phone, someone was at the door. I did not know who it was. I talked to her very briefly about wanting to talk with her a little longer and at length about their personal situation. She expressed no reluctance to talk, but the doorbell kept ringing. So I said, go to the door, and she did. When she came back, she said she was on her way out. I told her I would call her back, but I said to her very briefly that I hoped that she would get some advice, that she would not do anything in a fit of emotion or anger that would essentially do damage to her own life and the life of her family. I said if she had any evidence, at first she said maybe I shouldn't go then. And I said, no, if people are there and if you've agreed to testify, you should go, but you should only talk about what you know and what you have good, firm evidence on. She said, well, I don't know. And that was that. That was the full extent of the conversation. I have since heard and read in the newspapers that there were supposedly implied threats and that there was a discussion of the damage being done to black leadership. That was not my concern, nor was it the tenor of my conversation. My involvement has in no way worked to obstruct justice, and it will not at any time work to obstruct justice, nor have I been involved in any way in the transfer of any offices for any reason. I guess that's probably where I ought to stop and answer your questions. Jim?
Mayor, when I hear that two of the primary friends are having marital problems, I don't really believe what gave you the indication that you ought to be going, that you would have any information about their marital problems?
Because there was, by that time, I was aware and had been informed, again, by family friends about the altercation with Miss Lopez. I'd rather not say. No, well, he was one of the persons that I talked to. Yes. Well, I tell you, there are probably as many lists floating around. And I have heard of different lists from different people. But I don't think it's proper for me to release that list or to make public anybody's name, particularly when I have no reason to believe that any of them are guilty any more than I am. I have not. Who's that?
What can you tell us about Chief Redding's briefing of Eugene Duffy?
Only that there was a conversation with Eugene Duffy the same afternoon that I talked with the chief. Duffy was in and out, and I don't know the extent of that briefing or how much detail there was. At that time, Chief Redding did not have any evidence of the criminal record of Miss Lopez, and evidently the file had been pulled out because of a pending investigation in DeKalb County.
Since Eugene Duffy is a longtime close friend of Julian Bond and former campaign manager, and the allegations were about Julian Bond, do you think it was proper for the chief to discuss them with Mr. Duffy?
Let's say there was no criminal investigation of Julian Bond pending at that time. There were unsubstantiated allegations, and I think that Chief is very careful about what he discusses. I don't know whether he knew that my name was on the list or not, but he did not mention that to me.
He knew that Julian Bond's name was on the list, and he apparently briefed a close associate of Julian Bond, who was the subject of allegations that had been supposedly made in confidence with Julian Bond.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. No, I don't. I really don't, yeah. Well, I'm not sure what it's done, and I think that that still remains to be seen. It simply says that folks are folks that have problems regardless of